Blech. Lake Michigan Monster, directed by Ryland Brickson Cole Tews. And apparently, and I didn't realize this is the same dude who just did 100 Beavers or whatever, which has been, everybody's been talking about 100 Beavers. It makes so much sense. While I'm watching this, somebody mentioned that that's the 100. Oh, Bob Rose mentioned that's the guy who did the Beaver movie. And I'm going, duh, that makes so much sense because I'd seen the trailer. And, you know, the style, I'd say Ryland's style in general, he's very influenced by Guy Madden, who is just such a wonderful, creative, incredibly visually theatrical, almost like, you know, and not because this is in black and white, although I don't think, are all Guy Madden's movies in black and white? I know he's done some black and white stuff. But that there is like a silent film quality to the movies. And it's my understanding that 100 Beavers is silent, but we're not here to talk about 100 Beavers. We're here to talk about Lake Michigan Monster, which I remember played at Genre Blast, and I missed it. I missed the screening. That was my first Genre Blast in 2018. The plot: an eccentric sea captain assembles a motley ship crew in a revenge mission to slay the sea monster lurking in Lake Michigan that killed his father. I believe Ryland and his team, they're out of Wisconsin. They're on the other side of Lake Michigan. Wait, that's wrong. I don't think Lake Michigan. Wait, no, Lake Michigan is Detroit. And I should know this. I lived in Chicago. My God, my geography is off. In any case, this movie was made for like $7,000. And, you know, that used to be such like a fetish, right? Oh, this movie was only made for this much money. Like, what does it look like? And I think that partially for me as a micro budget filmmaker making his third, technically fourth micro budget film, if you want to count what's about to come out on the channel, Kuyashi Gonzo, Blood Visions and Couch Magic, always be plugging. That's coming soon to the channel, feature-length film. You're always like drawn towards films that are made for a small amount of money because you're wondering in your head, like, is it possible to do this? Like, can I do this myself? Can I do this for nothing? Because I don't have money and I'm not going to do the crowdfunding thing. And I'm not going to, you know, what high concept, low budget sort of situation can I get myself into? And Lake Michigan Monster is a brilliant exercise in this avenue. It's got a little bit of it's got a classic kind of premise. It's not an entirely original premise, but he brings a lot of humor. There's a lot of visual effects, a lot of green screen in this. But here's the beauty, and here's the beauty of black and white. My first feature was shot in black and white. Here is the beauty of black and white. Black and white, when you remove color from something, you are afforded a goodwill that shooting something in color does not provide for you. It puts a malaise, a sheen. I've talked about this before. It puts like a veneer over whatever it is that you're doing. And suddenly the budget or lack of budget becomes inconsequential. You don't see the cracks. You don't see the seams. In this case, I would say the seams are really the green screen, all the green screen stuff that they had to do for this movie, all the animation. I mean, just an onslaught. And clearly I would imagine Ryland himself, I don't know. I have to imagine that. I hope I'm saying his name right. Ryland. Is that how you say his name? I imagine that Ryland or someone close to Ryland is a visual effects, does visual effects or does, motion graphic animation, basic blue screen, green screen, motion graphic animation in Premiere Pro. The third act of this movie just gets so batshit. There's so much that happens. After a while, the plot the plot sort of slips away because there's not really much of a plot. They're just, bumbling around. He's got his, I'm trying to remember the names of the ship. There's somebody, Pepsi, is the echolocation person. Seaman ship. You know what? I should be looking this up. Let me see if I can find it. Lake Michigan Monster. Because I'm talking Lake Michigan Monster. Here we go. The team. Wait, here we go. Sorry. Sean Shaughnessy Nedge Pepsi, Dick Flynn, Ashcroft, and Seafield. And and they're just, there's just a lot, there's just a lot of insanity. We've eventually, it's revealed that the sea monster is actually the half sibling of Seafield himself, and they have this long epic underwater fight. It turns into a live action black and white cartoon. And it's short, man, and it's so nice that it's short. It's not like, it's 78 minutes long, so it's just a real nice, quick, they just in and out. And here's something that's really amazing: the way that they shoot coverage and everything. And this is what I've learned as a filmmaker. If you don't have like an entire location available to you, like a lot of the locations in this movie are sort of fabricated, right? They're sort of what's it called? Everything feels kind of like piecemeal, and the way that's accomplished is with these sort of all these close-up shots. You don't really get a sense of the background of where they are. And so I don't know, maybe I'm just looking at that through a filmmaking prism, but I was like, yeah. And like, what happens? They're trying to hunt the sea monster, and the sea monster lays an egg, and then they kill the egg, and then there's revenge, and they end up killing one of the crew members, and then he gets like resurrected. And as I said, by the third act, there's like crazy underwater swimming with sword fights, and it's crazy. It's just a crazy freaking movie. And I thoroughly enjoyed myself watching it. And again, watching something like this, it gets me hyped up. I'm like, fuck yes, black and white micro budget filmmaking. Anybody, I was watching this movie and I'm looking at how like, I watched it on Canopy, and I'm looking at how like compressed the picture is coming through. I don't know if that's because of my Wi-Fi. I don't know if that's the actual, compression of the movie when it was being exported. There's a million, I don't know what they shot this thing on. There's a million different ways, and you could tell they threw on some film grain. They did exactly what I did on my first film. And eventually this got distribution with Arrow Video. I mean, it really had legs, and it led to this 100 Beavers movie. And I can't wait to watch that in November. I'm going to watch that. And, whatever this guy does next, I mean, he's like going to be a friggin', here's the thing. Not only, the beautiful part about micro budget filmmaking in a regional kind of way is that you take something that or something that's familiar to you, or your best weapon is whatever you can uniquely bring to the table. And in this case, they had a lake, and they're in the Midwest, and it just sort of all congeals. Yeah, it's like the Loch Ness Monster, but we're doing it in Lake Michigan. And like they keep the monsters kind of hidden the whole time, except you see the hands. And then when you see the full monster, it's a lot more effective. So they're kind of doing like a Bruce the Shark, hide the shark sort of Jaws sort of thing. There's a little Jaws DNA in there. There's a little bit of Captain Nemo. There's a little bit of Captain Ahab, a little bit of Moby Dick. I'd say Moby Dick is probably the biggest influence here, more so than say Jaws. But, I'm watching this, I'm like, this is on Canopy, and like, look at like how, like sometimes the picture is so dirty, whether it's because of the film grain or the compression. I'm like, they could have shot this on a cell phone and I wouldn't have noticed. And it doesn't affect my enjoyment or what this movie is. And so it just goes to show that, you can really take anything and make a movie. It's true. I always hyper fluctuate between this idea, this notion of like, oh, you can make a movie with anything. And, oh yeah, they make a movie with anything, but look at all the accoutrement that they have attached to this, rig. They have all these lenses. They have an iPhone. Like Danny Boyle just shot the new 28 Years Later movie on an iPhone 15, but he had like, people are all like bent out of shape because he has whatchamacallit. He has he has like a whole rig to go around this iPhone 15, which is basically, and I understand why he shot it on an iPhone, because he shot the first 28 Days Later was shot on a mini DV camera. And at the time you look at that mini DV camera and you're like, kind of like, oh, this is weird. This is so like lo-fi. And obviously there were a lot of filmmakers who had a lot of, piss and vigor and hope when they saw that lo-fi look in 28 Days Later. But the amazing thing about it is, 22 years removed, that movie has such an interesting aesthetic. Mini DV went from being like amateur hour to being an actual like aesthetic, like artful aesthetic choice that because we don't see it anymore, because mini DV has gone out of style. So the idea that he's trying to do something like that, he's trying to chase the dragon, if it were, with the iPhone, is very interesting to me. And I don't know what they shot 100 Beavers with, and I really would like to know what they shot Lake Michigan Monster with. But it just, I don't know, it's a real testament to that sort of thing, whatever you want to call it. So point being, I highly recommend this movie. It's great. Really, really, really fun. Okay, moving on. So that was Lake Michigan Monster. And I gave it 4 out of 5 stars and a heart reaction.